and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, then welcome to my channel. My name is Elise Camarena. Make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button so you can watch future videos with me in Murders and Chill. Now, today I am going to be talking about the case of Fred and Rose West. Now, this is a very heavy case, and I want to give a trigger warning right now. There is evidence of sexual assault. I'm going to be saying SA as I go through this video. And there is evidence of incest, torture, brutality, and child abuse. If this is not something that you think you can handle, totally understand. This is a really heavy case, so if you are not able to handle it, I totally understand. Just make sure you hit that subscribe button though, so that way you can watch future videos with me, just because, I mean, not every single case will involve all of the things I'm going to be talking about today. I hope you're still going to stick with me. Now, I am going to be telling you the story about the Wests. So let's jump in. First, I'm going to get a little bit of a background for each person. First, we're going to talk about Fred West. He was born in a small village on the borders of West England, and he had a rough childhood growing up, to say the least. Now, first of all, his parents are awful. Like, just flat out, his parents are awful. Starting with his mother introduced him to sex at a very early age. His family basically taught him a lot of inappropriate things growing up, especially his mother. His mother ended up making him have sex with her at the age of 12. I'm sorry, what? They made it seem like it was okay, that this was totally normal, and Fred, don't worry, you don't need to tell anybody, everything's fine, no one would even bat an eye, you know, kind of thing. He had a sister who he raped. And this somehow got back to the cops, and when the cops tried to intervene, the sister just dropped all the charges and refused to give any evidence. And I think it might have been because her parents might have, you know, kind of gotten alone with her and sort of just told her, you know, if you do stuff like this or whatever, then you're not allowed to live with us anymore, and, you know, things like that. I think they scared her into submission. And because this happened, basically, Fred got away with it. And when you can get away with SA, your own sister, you pretty much think you can do anything. And I think maybe that might have had something to do with the future crimes he commits. I'm not 100% sure, but I have a bit of a gut feeling there. But we're gonna move on. This also led him to be completely obsessed with prostitution and pornography and just all kinds of awful things. Next, we're going to be talking about Rose West. She was born in Devon, England, and her childhood was just as bad. Even in the womb, things started badly. Her mother was very depressed, and she was depressed because she was living with her husband and other children, and he was just a very violent man. And because she was so depressed, she went to the doctor, and they did electroshock therapy on her while she was pregnant with Rose. People are saying that they don't think it was going to have an effect on her. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe it at all. Because they say when you go through an electric shock therapy that you essentially have a seizure. And when Rose was born, she unfortunately was born with some cognitive disabilities. And she was mostly okay, but it was just one of those things where she just wasn't at a level that she should have been as the other kids were. And the kids, you know, they bully her and they make fun of her because, you know, kids are just mean sometimes. And it's awful because not only was her father abusive and violent, he SA'd her when she was about 14, 15. And he kept doing that to her for a while, and she just wanted to find a way out. Well, you know, who wouldn't? Especially, you know, a woman. She was a woman who got SA'd. She was forced to have sex with her father. And she lost her virginity to her father. That kind of thing is supposed to be something that you give away to somebody you're truly in love with. And, God, he is an awful man. Awful, awful man. I'm glad he's dead now. So that's a bit of a background on the two people there, Rose and Fred. Now, going into Fred's life further, he actually married a prostitute, and she had a child with another man. The little girl's name was Charmaine, and he took care of her, because he's married to his wife, Rena Costello. That's what her name was. And, they were married, and eventually they ended up having a child of their own named Anne-Marie. And, he would just do awful things. Awful, awful things. And I'll go into that with his own daughters in a little bit, but I am going to basically tell you how he came to meet Rose and how she helped play a part in his heinous crimes. So Fred was the kind of guy who would find girls on the highway or, something like that, and just be like, hey, can I give you a lift home? Or, just being a nice guy and, okay. And at one point he would tell these girls, hey, if you're looking for a job, I actually am able to go ahead and hire you as a nanny because I have 2 kids. And, some of these girls, they were just drifters and they needed money, So they said yes. They were hired on by him, as a nanny, when really the job included them having sex with Fred. The first nanny's name was Anna McFall, one of the victims that I'm going to be talking about today too. But I want to further tell you how Fred and Rose met. Now, Fred and Rose met at a bus stop in England, and they just kind of hit it off, but she was 15, he was 27 at the time, and, he was kind of gross and smelly, and she was just kind of disgusted with him at first, but then he was just smooth. He could go ahead and, get anybody to go ahead and listen to him. He was just charming. And ladies, that is dangerous. He did pretty much the same kind of thing with her. He was just like, hey, why don't you come be my nanny and, make yourself some money? And she said, sure, that would be fine. She'd be good to do that. But, her and Fred, they just kind of really bonded, because they had the same kind of background. They could really communicate with each other. Both their mothers were named Daisy, which is kind of random, but okay. And, they seemed to reach each other on a more personal level. And so when she was hired, she was just like, like I said, she was pretty happy to go there. And she was pretty much into him too, so they definitely had sex. But when she wanted to move in with him to go ahead and be the nanny, her dad did not like that. And Fred had to kind of be like smart about it and not just be, taking her out of the home. And he went ahead and made it seem like it was a partner kind of situation. And he had like a trailer caravan type thing. And he made sure that they could go ahead and live close to her parents. So then that way it was kind of like, he still had a hold on his daughter. Gross. Later on, she did find a way to get out of her parents' home. Now, she completely went ahead and left them and made sure that they knew she was not coming back. She was with Fred from now on. And her dad threw a little conniption fit and, pretty much told her, if you're going to leave, you can never come back. And she's like, bye. But unfortunately, she's giving up one evil just to go to another. So her and Fred actually ended up getting married on January 29th, 1972, which I find very interesting given the fact that he's already married to Rena Costello. Wonder how that worked out. Might want to keep that in your noggin. So, given that they were married and, wanted children, they actually moved over to 25 Cromwell Street in Midland, England. And Fred was a builder, so the place that they had, he was actually able to build lodging, so that way he could go ahead and get people to come and stay so they could go ahead and get a little bit of extra money, especially given the fact that they are having children. So over time, Fred and Rose ended up having 8 children. However, at least 3 of them were from the clients that she had when she was being a prostitute. Classy, very classy. I kind of think that she got pulled into this world by Fred and sort of became like a sorcerer's apprentice sort of thing. So maybe she didn't want to commit these upcoming crimes I'm going to talk to you about at first, but then she got into it and just found herself into a world that she just didn't want to get out of. For example, she would help him go find more nannies. So she would go on the road with them and, they would go find people and just kind of bring them back to their place, lure them back to their place. And it would look better that Rose was in the car, that they weren't just getting in the car with some random dude. And they would tell them, hey, we are offering you a nanny position. It looks like you're going to need some money. So they find a girl by the name of Caroline. She is 17 years old. And they bring her back to 25 Cromwell Street. And she starts to kind of see everything that's going on, and she's starting to see that some of the requirements of being a nanny is going to be having to sleep with Fred or Rose. And she just was like, you know what? I'm out. So luckily, the first time around, she got out. But because Rose and Fred already knew where she was at the bus stop and everything, they were able to just kind of pick her up and just be like, hey, the kids really miss you. We really miss you. You should come back. Just trying to get her back. And she's just kind of like, you know what? Okay, they didn't hurt me. I'm a little nervous to go into their car right now, but they didn't hurt me the first time around, and, maybe I'm just overreacting. And so they have her get into the back of the car. And Rose goes from the front to the back and starts sexually assaulting Caroline. And Caroline is just trying to push Rose off of her, and then Fred turns his head around and just straight up punches Caroline in the face. So much to where she was just knocked out for the longest time. And when she came to, she was in their home in a cellar, and she was tied down to a bed and essayed for the longest time. She was beaten, she was whipped, she was just tortured, and she was put on a hook and just attacked. And she was with them like that for 36 hours. And she figured out that the only way she was going to be able to get out of this place was to kind of go along with their scheme and act like she was really into it in order to find a way to get out. Because during this time, they have kept her tied up because, they didn't want her to run away. And she somehow convinced them that, hey, you don't need to tie me up. It's okay. I'm into this kind of thing. And they were like, okay, that's fine. So they untie her. And then Rose just walks around the corner to, I think, the laundry room or something. And Caroline books it. You know what? Good for her for surviving. Anyway, she got out, thank goodness. And she went to the cops, explained everything. And, that's finally when Fred and Rose ended up having to go to court. And when they went to court and, kind of explained everything on their side, it was a he said, she said kind of thing. And Caroline didn't want to go ahead and say specifically that she was SA'd, or she didn't want to go ahead and give evidence sort of thing, perhaps not maybe a SA kit sort of thing, just because she would have to relive those memories. And, apparently when that happens, Fred and Rose only get smacked with a fine. fine. And Caroline had to go through all of that, and all they get is a fine. Anyway, I do just want to say, don't mind little cattail behind me, because she just wants to be in this video. I do have to say, and I am not blaming Caroline when I say this, always, always trust your gut. If you ever feel nervous around somebody, just trust your gut, because your gut will always tell you when something is wrong. And it's just very important to go with your gut. Maybe I don't need to say that so many times, but I just want people to understand that if your whole body is telling you not to do something, listen to it. And as more time went on, it was kind of like Rose just wanted to, encourage Fred to take things a step further, kind of thing. Like, she just wanted to keep the spark alive so he would continue to take care of her, sort of thing, watch after her, especially given the fact that they had 8 children. And she pushed things to the limit, to the ultimate limit, to the worst kind of limit in the world, because she encouraged Fred to essay his firstborn daughter, Anne Marie. And they did. They brought her back down to the cellar. They tied her to the bed. They gagged her. And Fred essayed her for a long period of time. His own daughter. What an awful human being. He's not even a human being. He's just a monster. And so is Rose. And after this, they actually made her a prostitute. They pimped her out to other people, and she was only 13. And whenever she would bring clients back to the home, Rose would basically just be there to watch, to make sure that she didn't tell these men that she was 13, because the age of consent in England is 16. So they didn't want to get in trouble. All around awful. These awful people. Some people should just not be allowed to breed. Now, for years, they ended up pulling the nanny routine with just anybody that they could find. All of the girls who were just drifting on the road. Everyone pretty much knew that Rose was bisexual. So they would actually brag to their friends that they would go ahead and find girls on the road to go ahead and have sex with. Obviously, they didn't go into too much detail about the torture and everything, because you know what, they'd go to jail. Now, there were 2 daughters that Fred and Rose had by the name of Heather and May. So the daughters knew that they had essayed Anne Marie. And Heather and May pretty much made a pact with each other never to be alone with Fred. Now, this pissed Fred off, because he apparently thought that he had a right to have sex with his girls. Disgusting. Now, we're thinking when Heather became about the age of 16, the year 1987, we think that she went ahead and told Fred to his face, I am going to go ahead and tell the police what you do to your children. And we think that from her saying that to him, he attacked her and she was killed. And at the time, people didn't really think of anything of it too much. They kind of asked, hey, where's Heather? And then, they would say things to people like, oh, she moved to Dubai. She's a drug dealer now. She didn't want to be here anymore, blah, blah, blah. Now, Fred was very house proud. He actually paved square tiles in his backyard, and this is chilling to me. He told the rest of his children that if they didn't behave, then they were going to end up like Heather under the patio. And then there was just this family joke that she is buried with tiles 2 down and 3 across. It was a family joke. These kids must have been so scared, these poor children. But one good thing did happen. The kids were actually in the street, just playing in front of their house, and by some sort of miracle, there was a constable, pretty much like a sheriff cop type thing, right there. And the kids kind of went up to them and was just like, hey, what would happen if, I told you that this was happening? And they were like, what? So that obviously put a little light on Fred and Rose, thank goodness, because now we are going to be talking about the downfall of Fred and Rose West. Now, when the kids were taken, they sang like canaries. Good, because these kids shared the family joke, and this got to a woman by the name of Hazel Savage, who was a cop, who convinced her higher-ups that a search warrant is warranted because Heather could be buried underneath the garden. So luckily, they gave her the okay. They came to the house on Cromwell Street, and they just started digging. And, Rose and Fred just kept saying, she's not there, blah, blah, blah. So luckily, they take them into custody, and then they went to go dig up the garden. Like I said, they went to the location where the family joke had it, and they did end up finding some bones. And they weren't sure, who this was yet. They had to confirm through forensic science that this was actually Heather. But the thing is, they found 3 femurs. So obviously there's more than just one body. So they dig around into the garden and they find a total of 3 bodies. Not looking good for you, Fred. And they also go into the home and they find 6 bodies in the cellar that was covered with concrete. They were able to find this through imagery technology, forensic science. And after that, Fred apparently spoke with Rose about all of this before any of the search warrant stuff happened. And he had said, if I ever got caught kind of thing, then I will just take the full blame and you just tell them, that this happened and you had no idea about what was going on, that you were pregnant the whole time and you just had no idea. And he would do this so that way they could keep the house. And Fred even admitted to killing Heather. He said that he got really upset when him and Heather, had a confrontation and he accidentally strangled her and then killed her. And then later on, while he was in custody, he actually did go ahead and write a full confession saying that he killed a total of 9 people. Things are just going to get worse and worse for Rose. Whatever, I don't care. So they go to court. Rose and Fred are in the same courtroom. Now, he kind of looks at her and she kind of looks at him like with disgust and doesn't even want to look at him. And he's just kind of looking at her like, hey, aren't you supposed to stand behind me? Like, what's going on? And he reaches out to touch her and she just kind of winces back. And, he's just like, I cannot believe she's doing shit like this. And I think he was just kind of fed up. He was like, you know what? I've already confessed and I think I'm just done. And this man decides, even after confessing, that he wanted to go ahead and kill himself. So he hung himself in jail on January 1st, 1995. So then that way he didn't have to go down for those crimes. However, given the fact that he died, it left Rose to go ahead and basically be thrown to the wolves. And you know what? Whatever. She went ahead and kept trying to just say she was innocent and didn't know anything about it. Luckily, there was things that put her away. For one, Caroline, the girl that they abducted for 36 hours, actually went on stand and gave a full story as to what happened. And I think the jury was just taken aback, and, she had said on the stand how much she just should have pushed harder during her time and, really tried to go ahead and get these people just behind bars. And then she was just really upset thinking, that maybe she could have saved these people. When they found the bodies, they actually ended up finding in the cellar the tools of torture. And they found whips, they found spikes, they found pliers. Because, like I said, these people killed these girls in a variety of different ways. And some of these girls were scalped and had their nails removed. And Fred liked to do this one thing where he would go ahead and smash their kneecaps so they couldn't run away. They, I guess, had learned from their first lesson with Caroline. They didn't want people to run away anymore. So they would just do that in order to go ahead and get them to stay for as long as they want until they decided to dismember them and then get rid of them, like a couple of assholes. And thanks to forensic science, they were able to go ahead and do a test on Charmaine's body, which says pretty much when she died. You know, just kind of like give a rough estimate as to when she died. And during that time, Fred was actually in jail for petty theft for 10 months, and during that 10 months, Rose was in charge of Charmaine, and somehow Charmaine just up and disappeared, and in school records, they had wrote down that she moved to London. So obviously, because she was in Rose's care, and then she just obviously disappeared, and then she was found in the cement, then yes, Rose did that because he could not have done that because he was not there. So she is just as guilty as he is. Maybe she wasn't so into everything in the beginning, but he corrupted her, and I think that she surpassed him and just made things worse for each victim. She just kept wanting to go farther and farther, like the awful woman that she is. And it's so weird because they look like two ordinary people. After all of this evidence, Fred died. Bye. And Rose was found guilty for 10 counts of murder. Now, when Fred was alive, he actually confessed to 2 murders by his childhood home where he buried them. So she wasn't charged for those 2 murders because he committed those. So she was sentenced to life in prison. Cool. Good. People like her shouldn't exist, so she really should be behind bars. Now, girls, I understand that this was a very different time. However, it is still very important in this world to never accept a ride from someone you do not know. Don't hitchhike, ever. Ever. And the only thing I could maybe see as an exception is an Uber. I mean, you know, then you have their license plate, their name. You can have people, you know, attached to that ride saying, you know, hey, monitor me. So then that way, you know, if anything goes awry, then they kind of know where to find you and, you know how to kick a little ass sort of thing. Caroline definitely did a very good job on that stand. She did cry, but you know what? She had gone through everything. And then you know what? She helped put her behind bars where she belonged. She lived a very good life, and unfortunately though, when she turned 61, she was diagnosed with cancer and she did pass. But she was able to go ahead and put this behind her. She wrote a book. She was a very good advocate in teaching people what not to do. Now, luckily, with this House of Horrors, 25 Cromwell Street was demolished because people would come up to the location and take pictures like it was some sort of, you know, like attraction kind of thing. Like, you know, if you're going on an adventure on your travels or something, that you should go there and take a picture in front of the house where all these people died. And I'm into true crime, but I would never do something like that. That's just horrifying. Especially in the documentary too, where you see this one man go to the home and leave flowers there for his daughter. Oh, sorry, I thought I could get through it, but it's just so sad. These young girls and the 2 daughters of Rose and Fred West did not deserve any of this, and I'm just glad that Rose and Fred are where they're supposed to be. Hopefully Red's in hell, and, you know, hopefully she never gets out of prison. Now I just want to show you a picture of all the victims from 25 Cromwell Street, and I just want to say I hope that they are all resting in peace. Even all of these years later, I hope that they have found another place in this world where they are given comfort. Because the way they died was just horrific. These people were horrific, and I honestly, I'm surprised in myself that I was able to make it this far, because they did horrible crimes to children, their own children. They did horrible crimes just to strangers. I mean, how do you live with yourself? I just don't understand how you can be this much of an awful person and just live with yourself. Anyway, I just wanted to say thank you for watching my video. I hope you hit that like and subscribe button again, and I will see you next time. And in the meantime, stay weird. Be safe. Bye.